Welcome to the conference. I'm Phil Rowe, Congressman from the 1st District of Tennessee. Since the founding of this nation, America's service members have been the defenders for freedom and democracy around the world. The men and women who serve our country willingly put themselves into harm's way in order to defend our values. I would like to thank everyone at this conference for the service they provided to our country, whether on the front lines in Afghanistan and Iraq or the front lines at home. The sacrifices our military and military families make are the highest of any American. And as a veteran, I recognize firsthand the pressures of being a military family and the impact their support has on the service member. And let me go back in my life, back in the 1960s when I was a college student. My scout counselor was a first sergeant in the 101st Airborne Division, one of the heroes I have in this world today. He was killed in Vietnam in 1965, and I grieve to this day for him. He had 4 children, and at that point in time, the country didn't do a very good job, I think, of supporting military spouses. I can make you this promise from the Veterans Affairs Committee, both Republicans and Democrats, that we are absolutely committed to caring for our wounded, for returning the loved ones and to their families, and it's the reason for the VA's existence. With a $1 billion budget, funding for this core group must be at the top priority. And I also, as a veteran, remember as a young Army captain, I was drafted in the military. I didn't volunteer and join, but I had a 6-week-old son when I went in the Army, and he was 12 weeks old when I was transferred and sent to Korea near the DMZ for the next 13 months. I know what it is to be separated from my family, from your family, and I want to thank all the spouses for what you do and mean to this country. I can't thank you enough for the sacrifice that you make for making our country the great country that it is. So thank you for your service also. As we begin this debate for the upcoming year on the budget, we must continue to protect the military and their families from the extensive cuts. No one will deny that we're in a tight budgetary times, but funding the VA remains a national priority. This is demonstrated in the 2013 budget, in which the VA funding continues to increase with particular emphasis on medical care. I am a physician, so I'm particularly attuned to this. The Veterans Affairs Committee and I will remain actively engaged in fighting for a full exemption of the VA through 2013. Sequestration, let me tell you what that is. That's a part of the Budget Control Act that we passed last year that make automatic cuts. The rest of us, all of us on the Veterans Affairs Committee, will continue to do all we can to resolve this issue on your behalf. Our veterans should be assured that the VA will not be affected by sequestration, especially as we anticipate the surge of our service members returning home from Afghanistan and Iraq. I hope sincerely that the administration's ability to make this decision is not motivated by politics. Our armed services and veterans are not the group of Americans who we need to allow political factors to cloud our judgment between what is right and what is wrong. And let me say this right now. I will never apologize for taking care of the people who have made this a free nation. Never. And I think no one on the Veterans Affairs Committee will either. The men and women who risk their lives to defend our liberty deserve to know the potential ramifications of the budget. Having served our nation, veterans are well trained and have highly skilled assets for any company, private or public. They have been made a promise to serve us, and we will in turn have to follow up on our promises to them. And assisting them in employment is an important part of that promise. Let me just say that it's inexcusable for our veterans to have an unemployment rate higher than the population in general. And having said that, there are programs available, and we're working on now, to take those very valuable skills that you've learned in the military and to make those applicable to skills that you'll use in the private sector. And let me give you an example. Let's say you've been trained as an EMT in the military. We want to be sure that you can get a certificate that says, hey, I have these skills and that these skills can be used in the private sector. Throughout the past year, we've been focusing on ensuring our veterans and their families have access to and support of the VA and the benefits that they've rightly earned, 4 of which have passed the House of Representatives and are now law. Student veterans in private schools were able to remain in school of their choice without incurring massive tuition increases this year, thanks to the passage of Restoring GI Bill Fairness Act of 2011. And the post 9/11 GI Bill, I just want to say, I used the GI Bill as a veteran. It was unbelievable for me in the 1970s, and the bill now is even better. We also put veterans who are out of work back on the path through employment through the VOW Act via Hire Heroes Act of 2011. For the first time in years, veterans will be able to receive an annual cost of living adjustment. We're constantly focusing on the importance of an encouraging transition of service members to take advantage of the new Transition Assistance Program to better prepare for the civilian job market. I would encourage each of you to remind your husbands or wives to take advantage of this new program. We spent months training our combat service members, but when they leave, we haven't had a dedicated that same amount of effort that we need to change. One of the things that we've done here on the Veterans Affairs Committee, and I've asked Tim Waltz, one of my good friends on the Democratic side of the aisle, is to form of the Invisible Wounds Caucus. We know that PTSD is a real problem, and certainly when spouses see their loved ones come home, sometimes they've changed. And we want to be there for you to treat those and take care of those invisible wounds. And over the past 10 years, we've made great strides in caring for our veterans and providing with them tools needed to reintegrate when they return home, looking particularly at programs to help at-risk veterans to help them lead healthy, normal, productive lives. It's the least we can do. With the last of our troops coming home this month from Iraq, we expect that many younger veterans will enter the VA system, but will also need to meet the needs of veterans in the system already. There can be no question that PTSD and other serious unseen wounds of war need to be addressed. Our collective inability to identify and treat mental illness in our troops and veterans has become a pressing national issue worthy of our attention. And this is one of the things with the Invisible Wounds Caucus that I think has disturbed me the most. In 2011, we had more veterans killed by their own self-inflicted wounds than in combat. That is not acceptable in this country. In October of this past year, I journeyed to Afghanistan for a health care-focused congressional delegation to visit our troops and observe the conditions at the medical facilities. Really what we did was we went out into the battlefield area and to the tip of the spear where the injuries occurred and followed those injuries to the Ford Surgical Hospitals, to Kabul, to Landstuhl, and to Walter Reed and Bethesda, and then to the VA to see the full circle and how these injuries are treated. I want to tell you that your husbands and wives are doing an incredible job. I was so impressed at the job they were doing. You have every reason to be proud of them, as I am, and I hope to visit again very soon. And I wholeheartedly support our troops and appreciate the work they're doing around the world, especially in Afghanistan in very difficult conditions. Whether they are currently fighting on the front lines or retired veterans, this country has a responsibility to care for our nation's heroes. I will continue to support our veterans and their families through the passage of important legislation that creates jobs, provides the benefits they need, and improves their quality of life. Improving care for veterans will be a priority for me as long as I'm a member of Congress. I thank deeply each of you as well as for your service to our nation. You are our priority too, and I know how hard it is to be a military spouse today. But I know also that your sacrifices are not going unnoticed. We will continue to fight for you. Thank you very much for this weekend.